Hello, 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 ho, ho, ho. It's the bro, ho, ho, ho. Show. Third year in a row.
Whoop, whoop. Hi, everybody. God, so behind today. Like everybody is at holidays. Why do we make ourselves so crazy busy all the time that we have to keep our makeup on our ho 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 show with bro?
Let's pivot into a self-care show, shall we? How do you make it through the holidays?
How do you? You know how? Reading and drinking.
Ooh, reading and drinking. Rinking.
Drinking. Or dreeding.
Dinking. No, that doesn't make sense. All right. Hey, sorry. Introduction. Welcome to the Thoughtful Bro. Third year in a row. Bro, ho, 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 show. Live streaming on a mighty blaze on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and beyond. The Thoughtful Bro is here every Tuesday at 2 for what makes great books tick, what makes great authors tick, and what makes founders of social media companies tick.
Boom.
Jenna Blum right over there. Mighty Blaze is all volunteer. We're never asking for money. You can support us by just smashing that like button, as they say. And if you want to spend money, though, we have some ideas for you. We have 10 ideas precisely, maybe more, but at least 10. For that person in your life, you're just wondering what the right gift is. We have some ideas. Even for people who don't like books. Think about that. I've got book ideas for people who don't even like books that they're going to like.
That's
just everything. Okay. I'm going to quickly introduce the fabled, near mythic co-founder of Mighty Blaze, Jenna Blum. She is the New York Times and #1 internationally best-selling author of the novels Those Who Save Us, The Storm Chasers, The Lost Family. Oprah.com said Jenna Blum is one of their top 30 women writers at work today. Jenna, of course, is the co-founder and CEO of literary social media marketing company Mighty Blaze. And even better, her first memoir, out in paperback right now, is called Woodrow on the Bench. Think of it as Tuesdays with Maury, but for dog lovers. Oh, and also, Jenna, do you want to talk about this crazy podcast you just launched?
Yes.
30 seconds or less, then we got to get to Christmas gifts, but go.
Okay, podcast is called The Key of Love. It's available on every major listening platform, Audible, Spotify, Google, Apple. Go there! And The Key of Love, it's a historical romance set in 1943 in Boston's Back Bay. A aspiring chambermaid with a beautiful voice is in love with a composer, which is all good until her photographer fiance comes home from the war. And her decision changes 3 lives in the course of that war forever. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you, Anissa. And it also is like an old-fashioned radio play with full cast of actors, sound effects, and music. The Key of Love. Next episodes drop Thursdays. Episodes 1 and 2 are out right now. And listen along with me, please, and watch the Space for Crazy 1940s Clothing. Thank you, Mark.
You know, I listened to The Key of Love, listened to the few episodes, and the first few episodes, and it did give me that feeling. It was sort of like, it made me feel like it was like out, on the plains in the 1930s. And it's like, the FDR chicken in every pot kind of era. And he's like giving his Saturday night, fireside chats to America. And here is this, Orson Welles produced radio play, just like the sound effects, the production values. It just has this kind of old fashioned vintage feel to it. I love it.
Thank you. And I love the Orson Welles thing. Chicken in every pot was Hoover, though. I have to say. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was Friday.
I'm a fiction writer, not a historian.
I am a historical fiction author, so I have to get these things right or I will hear about it on Amazon, Goodreads, and beyond. But yeah, thank you for saying that's exactly what we were aiming for. In the next episodes, I will be sitting like literally with my Ovaltine next to a big radio listening to this.
Oh yeah, one of those like giant radios with the big knobs. Oh, That's great.
Yep. Tune in Thursdays right here.
So we have to get to these wonderful books. It's like everybody loves a top 10 list, right? But before we do, I just have to introduce a third host on the show. You might not know this, but the llama is here.
Is that the Christmas llama?
That's the Christmas llama. If you didn't know about the Christmas llama, now you do.
That is not Joe Mama. It's Bro Llama. Right.
That was good. It's not Joe Mama. It's Bro Llama.
I'm on Sudafed and rum. So everybody buckle up for this episode.
Whoa. All right, here we go. So we're going to start. Please, ladies and gentlemen, these books are amazing. This is like why we do this is to like find books that are so amazing they just blow you out of the water. We have found these are not all the great books of the year, but these are some that just really moved me and Jenna. And I'm so proud to do the honors of talking about the first book on my list. And now I said to you, I might come up with a book that is for like the person who doesn't even love books, you know, the person who is like not a literary fanatic, you know, somebody who doesn't like poetry, for example. But this is a book of poetry for the non-poetry person. It is Billy Collins' Musical Tables. Now, this is the last interview I just did, the most recent interview I did on this show a few weeks ago. I just love this book so much. Billy Collins is the former poet laureate of the United States. This is his 13th book. He's one of those authors where you pick it up, you know, any page you open to, you're going to know it's a Billy Collins poem. It's just the humor in it is what I love so much. It's so approachable. It's so funny. He's almost like a stand-up poet. And like I said, I mean, you know, you could give this book to a 12-year-old who's never read a book before, and they would find something in it. And you could give it to somebody who is, you know, 75 and a literary professor of literature at Harvard, and they would find something about it. I mean, Billy Collins really is kind of in that national treasure category. So highly recommend. Slim, short book too. I mean, I read this book in about 45 minutes. So just actually a great gift book idea.
It's a slender volume.
The Slim Gem.
It's a Slim Jim book. And also I have to say.
Slim Gem. Slim Gem.
Oh, Slim Gem. Oh, I think I'm kind of hungry. If you guys, I love Slim Jims. This book is the Slim Jim of poetry. So if you like your, you know, nice, meaty, fatty, salty, yummy poetry, it is in this volume. Also, all of the interviews, all of the authors we're talking about today, you can see all the interviews on YouTube forever. And I highly advise checking out the Billy Collins interview, because Billy Collins is so funny, which comes through in his poetry, that even though I had like this monstrous migraine the day that I produced that interview, I was still like laughing, even though I was like weeping at the same time. Mark can tell you what I looked like during that interview.
Oh yeah. Jenna was like, so Bozina, thank you so much. That was a really great interview, and thank you for watching it. But like Jenna was like doing this thing, like in our back-end user interface, like you can see the other people. Like we have our producer Bo Ellis on the call right now, and she is we can see her at the bottom of our screen. You can't see her, but we can. So Jenna was producing this interview, and she was like up against the camera with her migraine, like she was like literally for 30 or 45 minutes just like up even closer, just like up, like holding her face. Every once in a while she'd type something or put a comment on screen, and then she'd be like and Billy Collins is like not even making a comment about this, but this is how it looked for 45 minutes.
That's hot though.
Yeah.
That's hot. That's like hot producer stuff. But anyway, it is absolutely true that I was like one bulging eyeball of pain, and yet still I could take in everything that Billy was saying and that Mark was saying. So whether you like poetry or not, you should buy this book, because it will make you like poetry. If you already love poetry, you're going to be happy.
Really?
About it, right?
Really?
This inspired me to ask for poetry for Christmas. Look what you have done to me. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, my turn. Yes?
Your turn. Go.
Woman on Fire, Lisa Barr. Many of you have probably heard about Woman on Fire this year, because she has been everywhere. Lisa Barr is like almost literally on fire. Thank God she's not literally on fire, but this book is like on fire. And I would describe this as Sidney Sheldon meets Holocaust stolen art. So it's about a woman who is like trying to track down the provenance of these paintings. And there's like a great arch villainess in this, if we can say villainess in this day and age, a villain who is female, who identifies as female, who's one of the best villains in modern times. I think she's like really super badass. So if you loved your Sidney Sheldon, if you love mysteries, and this is a mystery even I can follow, and I don't read mysteries because I can't follow them. I could follow this. So like if you love your mysteries, your Sidney Sheldon, your like high stakes art world stuff, this book is on fire. It is for you. Lisa Barr, Woman on Fire, folks.
Now, Jenna, let me ask you. I haven't read that book, but it sounds amazing. And I have theories about antagonists and villains in books, and about like kind of what makes a great villain. And like two great qualities. One is that the villain always drives the action and drives the protagonist to kind of do what they have never, to kind of heights of heroism they never would have found on their own. And the other thing about a villain is that you're sort of deeply attracted to them, and you feel like you might want to be them, or they sort of have a point or whatever. does this villain that you were talking about have these qualities?
Yes. And guys, if you hang out with Mark long enough, we told you he was thoughtful. You will ingest all of his theories about antagonists, protagonists, anti-protagonist, story structure, story freakiness, llamas, and everything. Like I learned so much listening to Mark. But yes, the villain, thank you, Llama Boy. This is your new name now, is Llama Boy. Little Llama Boy. Thoughtful Llama Boy. This villain embodies all of those things, and in fact, she's one of the villains whom you think, do I want to be the villain or do I want to be the protagonist? She
Perfect.
has a lot of fun, right? And
Mhm.
so, yes, and you find yourself kind of rooting for her, even though you know she's evil. That is a successful villain in my book,
Totally.
and also in this book, Woman on Fire.
Awesome. Okay, next. My next book. It was a real honor to do this show. I've had a few political figures on my show, political, military figures from kind of across the political spectrum over the years, and this was one that like really meant a lot to me. And it's Officer Mike Fanone's "Hold the Line."
Love. Guys,
Yeah,
go watch this interview instantly on our YouTube channel. Just put in Michael Fanone in the Thoughtful Bro playlist. You will be so heartened and also just so, I don't know, invigorated, I think.
Yeah, he's an invigorating guy. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a story. For those who don't know Mike Fanone, he's like on TV all the time now. But he was, he testified at the January 6th hearings. He was on the front lines of the battle for the Capitol on January 6th. He was off duty that day, and he's part of the Metropolitan Police Force in DC. And he just went over to the Capitol and realized, he needed to try to fight to save the Capitol and to save our democracy. And he was beaten within an inch of his life, and he almost died that day. And this book reads like a thriller. It reads like a thriller. I mean, like there's some background about him and his life, and he really, was a cop on kind of like some of the roughest beats in Washington, D.C. But most of the story is just sort of a kind of blow by blow of what happened on January 6th, like right in the front lines. And so it's just an incredible read, and it's just about something that couldn't be more important right now. I mean, to this day, there's a whitewashing of January 6th, and you have elected officials right now saying they wish they could do January 6th all over again, and they would have been more armed, and they would have succeeded in overthrowing our democracy. This is an ongoing fight, and Michael Fanone, sort of that day and in the aftermath since, in the 2 years since, has just been on the front lines trying to make people realize what the truth is and how dangerous it is.
And let's talk a little bit about what happened in the green room. Like sometimes I think, I wish we could record this for you guys, but sometimes I think that the meatiest part of the interviews almost always happens in the green room. We get these fantastic interviews with our authors, and then as soon as the cameras are off, we all relax. And he was talking about being in the tunnel. Can you share a little bit about that with our audience?
Oh, I mean, maybe you have a clearer memory than me of that, but indeed, we stayed in the green room with him for like an hour afterwards, and he was just talking about like how intense that was. I mean, it was just this kind of small tunnel that leads out of the Capitol where like he was fighting, and it was just it reminded me of a scene from that film 300, where there's like the entire movie is a battle taking place in this narrow corridor where it's like everybody's packed in like sardines, and it's just this medieval hand-to-hand fighting. And the thing about it was, everybody who was in that tunnel were people from the Metropolitan Police Department who just volunteered to show up that day. He's like, I knew every one of those guys there, and I knew the Capitol wouldn't fall because these guys were like my brothers, and there was such trust and camaraderie. And there's a story to be told, or maybe a film to be made about just those guys in that tunnel, like holding the line, as the book says.
So good. And also I feel like he could use some money, right? Like this is a dude who got beaten to within an inch of his life, and he had heart issues because of it. He was beaten with an American flagpole, that was
lost his job.
Yeah, we support the blue, like we back the blue. And so when we were talking to him, he was very salty. And before we got on air, he was dropping the F-bomb a lot, which I also do, but I was like, oh, F, like this is going to be some crazy kind of interview. And then he was incredibly articulate, incredibly impassioned. But it has been a tough slog for him, and he gets told a lot, whatever. So if you feel inclined to throw money at a real American hero and a real American patriot, Michael Fanone, Hold the Line. That is your book, I would say.
Yep. That's it.
Yep. Okay. Different note. The Matchmaker's Gift, a great antidote to like high political drama, right? By Linda Cohen Leugman, who is one of my dear tribe. Love her so much. Matchmaker's Gift, which is hard to say when you've had a lot of coffee, is historical fiction. And it is, as one might guess, about a matchmaker on the Lower East Side in the early 1900s who is a woman, which was not a thing then. Like you had to be actually...
Being a woman was not a thing then?
Being a woman matchmaker. Being a woman actually was also not a thing then. Like nobody wanted to be a woman in the early 1900s. It's tough before suffragism really took hold. Mark. But what this is really like a sort of ceiling breaking portrait of a young woman who can sense, even when she's a child, whether two people are connected in this like super magical way that I won't spoil, but that's incredibly charming. And she has to fight her way through sort of like ranks of rabbis who are like, women can't do this. Like,
Wow.
And people got paid like a handsome amount to create good marriages in that time. And the rabbis who were doing it then were actually like really offended that a young woman would presume to be able to tell people like, yes, this is the perfect mate for you. So how she fights her way through those ranks, how she rises as a matchmaker, the stories of love in this book, really heartwarming. And then we also follow the story of her granddaughter, who's a lawyer, who's a divorce lawyer, and how learning more about her grandmother's past affects her decisions in the present about her career and also about love. So if you want something like uplifting this season, I highly recommend The Matchmaker's Gift. If you believe in love, if you want to believe in love, if you want stories about love, this is your book.
Wow. It sort of warms the old cockles of the heart, as they say. Just hearing you describe that.
But does it warm the llama cockles? That is the question.
I think we should stop pursuing the term llama cockles right now and move on to our next book.
Up the cockles, and it wasn't me. That's all I have to say about that. And also the llama. Your turn.
Okay. Every once in a while, the llama's just got to come back. The Matchmaker's Gift.
Say llama, I will drink.
Oh, okay.
Every time I say llama, you have to stand up and show the llama so you get your exercise today.
Llama said knock you out. Here we go. My next book is one of my real literary heroes. Now, folks, I mean, this is like the young Mark, a freshman in college, just thinking about his life and like what does life mean and all that stuff. I still think about those things.
Wait, can I show the photo of young Mark in college?
No, you can't. Nope. That was just for a circle of small friends, Jenna. But anyway, there is a picture of me with bleached blonde hair. But when I was young, I read this book called The History of God, and it just had all the things that I loved in it. It had history, it had myth, it had God, it had the meaning of life, it had psychology. I mean, just a real masterpiece by a woman named Karen Armstrong. And Karen just has put out a book every few years since then. And these are just, to me, I mean, she's probably the author that I've read most in my life and who has meant the most to me, kind of if you take all my reading life together. And she's still going strong. And her latest book is called Sacred Nature. And it's a classic work of Karen Armstrong, which is a book about how all the world's great religions and oldest religions over millennia have thought about how to treat nature, what our place is in the natural world, and obviously in the ongoing climate crisis that we're in right now, which is worsening by the day. This is a time to be thoughtful about what does our relationship to nature mean and what should it look like. And it was just, I did an interview with her. It was just totally wonderful and such an honor. And so anyway, I keep offering slim. I don't offer big fat tomes. All these books you could read in like 2 hours, but this is just a beautiful book that kind of situates you not only within nature, but within all the world's great religious traditions, and kind of what do the great poets and philosophers and writers and thinkers of history think about what our place is in the universe. So beautiful book.
Light reading also, I would say. Did reading this book help you feel optimistic about where we're headed in terms of protecting our natural environment?
I wouldn't say, it's not really a book of science that kind of weighs in on, what are our chances? And like, if we don't, curb emissions by 2030 or whatever the date is, then, we're committed to a very different kind of future. It's more about, I think what it tackles, Jenna, is one of the things that is like one of the hardest issues in climate change, which is like, how should I feel about it? Like me or you, like we're just one person. And even if we decide to reduce our energy consumption by 80% and we'd ride our bicycle everywhere or whatever it is, right? Even then you can feel like sort of helpless and a pawn in this kind of global drama. And it really helps you kind of think about like, what can I do on a day-to-day basis? How should I feel? What are some practices that I can put into my daily life that, help you feel like you're doing something and you're situated properly with nature?
Oh, I love that because it sounds like it gives you some agency as the reader.
Yeah.
So many of us see these articles, like every morning I wake up and read Heather Cox Richardson, Paula, and the New York Times and the Washington Post. And it's always like, okay, the climate is Mount Vesuvius. It is going to erupt soon and kill us all. And you just think, I'm so tiny. Like, how can I affect that just by like not buying toothpaste in plastic tubes? What should I do? But in fact, if we all do something, then that has a collective impact. And so I'm really glad that you introduced that book. I also just want to give some quick shouts out to people who are joining us today. Anissa, hello. Thank you for always bringing your light to the blaze. And Bozina, hello. I hope I'm saying your name right, as I should, because you're one of our intimates. And also Jennifer Ast, who is a meteorologist, like a chick scientist. Dig it. Like, she's joining us today. So happy to see you. Thank you. And again, all of the interviews that Mark has done with all of these authors, you can see on the Blaze YouTube channel. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Smash that like button, as Mark would say, but go on over and check out the behind the scenes interviews with these authors. Okay.
And also we're going to be posting all links to buy these books on bookshop.org, supporting indie booksellers. So we will there's a special stall just for this episode on bookshop.org. And so we will post that in the chat. Hi, Jennifer. This does sound like the book for you, Jennifer, to be honest.
It totally does. Also,
yeah.
Jennifer is like a great force for positivity, which is a word that I'm not supposed to use, but I use it anyway because she is. She's like a ray of sunshine. Anyway, so yes, if you go to bookshop.org, you'll see all of today's books. You can access them easily. And also Blaze staffers book racks for the ho, ho, ho holidays. And also books by Blaze authors, of which we have many, including authors who are going to be coming out next year. So that's like our little mid-show commercial. And Mark, you're going to be really mad about the next book.
Okay. Oh, yes. How can I be mad at Matthew Quick? He's like one of the great
You're not mad at
mentors.
Matthew Quick, but this was a book that I think you actually wanted to tout today. And guess who got to it first? Oh, not.
We're going to like Venn diagram this, though. We're both going to take a turn. So you
really?
go first.
I didn't know that. Not actually sure that's going to happen. But okay, llama boy. So Matthew Quick, we are the light. Llama, 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 llama. I'm just going to say that anytime I want to distract you, you just stand up and long. So Matthew Quick, we are the light. Matthew Quick is the author of Silver Linings Playbook, which some of you may have read as a book, which I did, and also seen as a movie with Jennifer Lawrence and, oh my God, the guy who I'm in love with, whose name I
Bradley
forgot.
Cooper.
Thank you. Oh my God. You've had too much rum and tea when you can't remember Bradley Cooper. Like, it's a sad day. Anyway, so Matthew Quick, we are the light. I think what really drew me to this book, while Mark is laughing cruelly at me.
No, that could be. It's funny. It could be a like a test, like are you drunk test? Like you got to like walk the line outside your car. Like instead, the officer could say, "Okay, who is in Silver Linings Playbook?"
Right? Or who is your celebrity boyfriend or girlfriend? And if you can't imagine, and you're like, I don't know, llama. They're like, no, not llama. Get in the car, put the cuffs on. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
You're trying to tell me off game, Mark. So we are the light. What really drew me to this book, honestly, was producing the interview in which Mark interviewed Matthew Quick about this book. And Matthew was this incredibly stand-up dude who talked about the sacrifices that he had made. I'll do the behind the scenes and then you can introduce the book. How's that?
Do it.
Okay. So he talked about the sacrifices that he had made to write both this book and other books, which included moving into his in-laws' basement to save money with his young wife, young marriage. I was like, this is serious dedication. He was talking about what a privilege it is to pursue a life of art, even when you have so little money that you have to live in the basement at your in-laws' house. And I thought, that is somebody who is a super dedicated writer. Not only that, he talked about sobriety and he talked about battling depression. And I just thought he was like such a candid dude who also provided so much inspiration. And then he started talking about the book itself. And what really won me over to it is that, like, very, very quick thumbnail. It's about a shooting that takes place in the movie theater of a small town. And the protagonist's wife comes to him, he believes, as an angel and speaks to him. And when I heard that, I thought, that is exactly the kind of book I want to read, not because it's like Hallmarky, but because if your loved one came to you as an angel, what would that actually be like? Like, I don't imagine it as somebody has huge, beautiful wings. It's more like they come to you at night and they whisper in your ear, or, how does this actually work? And how do you know that they're an angel? Do you believe that it's real? And so I thought I have to read this, because somebody who has such a gritty background and such a real background and writes so well about mental instability, then writing about angels, that to me was a beautiful combination. Please take it away.
I agree. The book was just fantastic. And, he set himself one of the greatest, challenges that a writer can have. Is like, how can you write a book that is like uplifting and also psychologically real and doesn't pull punches about a mass shooting? And he does it. And it's just a kind of, as they say, a kind of master writing at the height of his powers kind of thing. Like, only like the most, dedicated, gifted authors would dare attempt writing such a story as that. And he did it. And I just want to say just one last thing about Matthew quick. When I had him on my show, he was such a class act. He wrote me, there's actually like 5 of these little postcards. This is the one with his actual signature on it. But he wrote me like a letter across like 5 or 6 different postcards about like saying, thank you for having me on the show. And like, I enjoyed it and da-da-da. And it was just like such a beautiful gesture. I mean, just for all the bros out there who are like, looking for a mensch, like, let's go. Like, that's your dude. I mean, one of the final thing I'll say about him is one of the quotes that really stuck with me from when he was on the show was, we were talking about what it takes to make it and kind of all the sacrifices that he made that you alluded to. And one of the things that he said was like, look, it takes a lot of pain. There is a cost to being an author. And are you ready to pay the cost? Because I know I am. And it was like, damn. I mean, like, you just got to be blunt like that sometimes. Like, it hurts. It's a long road. There's a cost. And he's like, I paid that cost, baby. And I believe it, so.
Yeah. And there's something about his demeanor. Like, we've all heard people talk about getting sober. We've all heard people talk about overcoming mental instability before. There's about, the whole sort of like in the trenches element of being an author. It's like, we're not actually digging ditches out there. We could have a much harder job, but at the same time, sometimes it is something that requires financial sacrifice, that requires time sacrifice. Obviously, people think you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
Don't know why they would think whatever. And then he somehow managed to talk about all of this stuff without being alienating and being inspiring simultaneously. So again, I would check out that interview, and definitely, if you're looking for an inspiring read, pick up We Are the Light. And you just reminded me of another T-bro who I want to call out, who I might replace one of my books, actually. So while you introduce your next book, I might go grab that.
Do it. All right. Hey, Bo, can you throw that latest question up from Chris Vasquez? Chris, hi. Good to see you, buddy. So I would say, I have a book for any kind of young, thoughtful bro is my next book. But you may be referring, because my younger brother, you may be actually asking, what about a book for him? And I will tell you that like either one of these books, Sacred Nature by Karen Armstrong, because my little brother, Michael, happens to be really into nature and kind of works on, ecological things and kind of farming and technology. Chris, yes, you are thinking about Michael. And like, so look, Sacred Nature by Karen Armstrong, or this Billy Collins book. I mean, I think Michael is not a big reader of kind of arty books, but I think that Billy Collins poetry book is like a great entryway for a scientific guy like him into poetry. So I think either of those would work. for my little brother, Mike. Chris, thanks for coming on the show. But, this book is also a book for just kind of, all the thoughtful bros out there. This one like really hit me, and it's called Lost in the Valley of Death by Harley Rustad. Now, I had Harley Rustad on the show. This is a book about, and we ended up going like over an hour, which is like a lot longer than I usually go, because I was just so compelled by the story. It's about a guy named Justin Alexander, and he was a kind of Instagram social media star years ago, and he traveled around the world as a kind of spiritual adventurer, and he would kind of go to very holy places in the world and meet monks and go to kind of religious rituals and festivals. And he disappeared, I think this is maybe 5 years ago, in this deep in the Himalayan mountains, in this kind of holy valley in the Himalayan mountains. And he was led there by a holy man, and he was sort of never heard from again. And like the last known evidence of his whereabouts was this photo that he posted on Instagram of him like living in a cave kind of at the foot of this valley that he was about to hike into, and from which he never returned. And I think what was so compelling to me about the book was just about, there's all these questions in it, like, how can you be authentic in the age of social media? And it's like, and I think you can, but it's like, what's so interesting about him is that he was like a spiritual seeker. Like he sort of thought of himself in these mythic terms, like almost like a kind of Buddha-like figure, or like the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which is a book that I love too, and that a book that I know he loved. And just thinking like, I am on this genuine spiritual quest for like enlightenment and to find the truth about life. And yet I'm also on Instagram all the time, like taking pictures of all of it. Like it's just such an interesting mashup. And then finally, on top of all that, this is like a true crime book. It's like, what happened to this guy? And actually, did somebody kill him? And like, does somebody know where he is? And the police kind of had conflicting stories. And then the author of the book goes to this valley looking for him. It's just got so much. Lost in the Valley of Death. 5-star recommendation.
That's so interesting. It sounds a little bit like Into the Wild. The story of Christopher McCandless, who decided he wanted to live off the grid and went to Alaska and then was never heard from again.
This book is compared to that book Into the Wild by Krakauer very favorably. Like, I mean, it's not like this is no Into the Wild. It's like, this is as good as Into the Wild,
Awesome. So yeah, if you guys like that book, if you like true crime, if you like nonfiction, you're looking for a good, meaty nonfiction read, that sounds amazing. And also it's something that I think about all the time in hoe mode, of course, because like I'm a marketing hoe. Like I love marketing. Everybody knows this. And at the same time, I'm trying to live a life. The irony is when you do social media as a writer or anybody, people are like, the number one thing you can do is be authentic. Then how authentic are you being when your first thought is, oh my gosh, I have to document this? Like the other night, it snowed here in Boston, and somebody said to me, oh my gosh, it's snowing. And I stepped outside. It was so beautiful. My first thought is, I have to share this on Instagram. Like I have to make a reel about this. And what kind of music do I put on that? And so the sort of uneasy meshing of living life and documenting life is a question I feel like we all have to struggle with at this point, or at least sort of grapple with on a daily basis. And so I'm interested in that aspect of loss.
Yeah, this is just that to like on steroids to the extreme. And, the sort of argument is made, but you don't really know for sure. But like, did he even go into this super dangerous valley just for the sake of Instagram followers? I mean, it's like his life, he was sort of like a movie star in his own very dangerous life. And without Instagram, would he have pushed himself that far? So just totally interesting set of questions.
That is super interesting. And I think now when I was in my active storm chasing days, when I was out chasing,
right.
Jenna Blum knows all about this. And I hope we get to do this together at some point. But when I was doing this really actively, it was pre-Instagram reel, pre-Instagram story, pre-TikTok, if you can even imagine such a world. But now we would be going into like that particular valley, like or a tornado alley, actually, like hoping to get some followers, which you would only do by like courting total freaking disaster and getting like way too close and getting flipped. So it is interesting to consider like what our lust for audience or our need for attention makes us do now that we have a platform to gain those eyeballs. So I'm going to read this, Mark. Thank you very much.
You got it. All right, you're up.
Okay, another adventure book that I love very, very much, and I have like the big bound manuscript here. The book itself I need to go grab, but it's Terra Nova by Henriette Lazaridis. I just interviewed her on Frontliner a couple of days ago. It was all blending together in my rum and tea addled brain. Mark was producing that one. I love this book. Henriette is True Confessions, a dear friend of mine. She first workshopped this in my workshop at Grub Street Writers like many years ago. And so I've had the great privilege of watching this grow from its original story into this novel. And I have to say, when I read the first story, I was like, Henriette, this one is going to hit. It is so amazing. It is a little bit like, I keep telling people this, Jack London and Anita Shreve had a baby. And the result is this book. So the story is about two explorers who are trying to get to the South Pole before anybody else. They're British, and they're racing the Norwegians, who are also trying to find the South Pole. And one of them is a world-class explorer, and the other one is a photographer, and they're friends. And they are in this landscape that is so deadly in every aspect, from the cold to the wind. There's something called a braided wind in this that I've never heard before. They're facing starvation. They are being blinded by the sun, which never ever sets. Like, they have a team of dogs, some of whom they might have to eat just to stay alive. Like, if you get frostbite, you get sent back and you might die on your way back to the ship, and that is moored in the Antarctic Sea. And there's that storyline, which is written in such a muscular, amazing fashion that I could not believe that the explorer himself and a man did not fight this. Like, and he really inhabits the character who's telling that story. And then there's a woman back in London who is a fierce suffragette and fiercely ambitious. She's also a photographer, and she wants to document something new, like not pretty landscapes, not just like the women's marches that are popping up then that so harken to our own time, but like some really new territory or terra nova. And she gets pushed out of her comfort zone to start documenting really gruesome images of what women were doing to themselves to try to gain the vote. And the big secret and the big reveal is she is in love with both of the men who are trying to get to the South Pole, both the explorer, who's her husband, and the photographer, who's her lover. And do they find out about this while they are out in the wild? Like, what kind of explosive secret, like what would that do to their chances of survival? It's so fantastic. It's an adventure tale. It has love. It has art. It has suffragism. Like, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I missed the author's launch of Terra Nova because I was on my couch reading Terra Nova. I could not.
Which, by the way, is like literally the only acceptable reason to miss a launch is like, I missed it because I couldn't tear myself away from your book.
Yes, literally. Like, if I were like dying of like COVID, I would still try to crawl to a launch in my hazmat suit. It's really important to authors that you are at their launch. It's like, that's why we write. Like, you have this like fantastic reunion of everybody you've ever loved in your life, as you will find out, Mark. But I couldn't get off the couch because the book had like pinned me to the couch in the best way. So again, if you're looking for like an adventure tale or a tale about photography, art, love, ambition, this is your book.
I love the pitch of this book. I haven't read this book, but one of my favorite books ever is this book called Endurance, which is about Ernest Shackleton and his kind of doomed exploration, an incredible survival story, searching for the South Pole. And, I think that part of what probably makes this book so great is that Henriette herself was a Rhodes Scholar and just an incredible, rigorous athlete herself. And I just popped in the chat, so please check out this link. A great, very short article about that Henriette wrote, which is about kind of how to approach writing like an athlete. And as somebody myself who is an athlete, and like sports has always meant a lot to me.
Wait, you're an athlete?
What's that?
You're an athlete?
Don't make me show you the llama.
I don't know how this proves your athleticism, but like now I'm so.
Did you see? I mean, like that was like I'm like doing like, yeah.
So I mean, I'm doing
just
that.
Getting up is exercise for me.
That's true. No, actually, like, Mark is an amazing athlete, and he sent me once a video of making like a basket with his back turned to the basket. He was like, "Boop!" He said, "You are a baller, bro." It
was a more complicated trick shot than that. Like, just shooting a shot backwards doesn't sound that impressive, but this was impressive. Anyway, moving on. I loved this article that Henriette wrote about how to write like an athlete. For anybody who's kind of like digging deep as a creative person, any kind of creative person, check out that article. It's just sort of like, you know what? Let's get it, baby. It's a great attitude. So, Jenna.
Yes.
We've almost come to the end here. We each have one more book, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, this was like the true superstar of the year. It's a book called Chasing Me to My Grave. Now, this book, I think, is an American classic in the making. I think this book will be read hundreds of years from now. I think it is one of the great kind of crystallizations of American race relations in the earlier part of the 20th century. It's a book by the artist Winfried Rembert. He told his life story at a very advanced age, the age of about 80 or so. I can't remember exactly how old he was, to a philosophy professor at Tufts named Aaron Kelly. And Aaron Kelly wrote down his life story in his voice, which is absolutely and utterly spellbinding and compelling. I mean, what a natural raconteur Winfried Rembert is. But his paintings are just also stunningly beautiful. I mean, I'm just going to show, you can't really get an idea on screen, but his life was incredible. He was born as a sharecropper. He was arrested in the civil rights movement on kind of trumped up charges. He was taken out of his prison cell and nearly lynched. He worked on the chain gang for 7 years. And then, he just led this incredible life, which again, kind of like hits all the high points or really low points of American race relations in the earlier part of the 20th century. And then, in the latter part of his life, he started painting, and these paintings are just beautiful. And I could go on and on about this book, but I would just say that it is as shocking as it is even more uplifting. As horrifying as it is even more beautiful. And he was a man who refused all bitterness, and he wanted to love people, and he wanted to uplift people. And so even though he's talking and pulling no punches about the terrors of his early life, these paintings are just beautiful. And in this interview, I am not a crier, but everybody in that interview, including me, got pretty choked up as we talked about Winfried's life. And of course, I should say that Winfried passed away right before the book came out. He said on the night before he died, his wife told him that she thought it was going to be a bestseller, and he was very humble about it. But his wife, Patsy, it's a great love story between these two, this book. And Patsy came on the show, and Winfried has passed away, but Patsy came on the show along with Aaron Kelly, who helped write the book. And it was just an incredible interview. And that book won the Pulitzer Prize for biography this year. As I said, I think it is a classic of its kind. It is a big, heavy, uplifting, beautiful read. This book is why books exist.
Whoa, that is really saying something that is amazing. I can verify I did not produce that interview because I was driving from Colorado to Massachusetts, as one does. And I remember very vividly being on the high plains of Colorado and Mark calling me after that interview and just being like, JB, like this was the most high voltage emotional interview ever. Like I got tears in my eyes. Can you tell me one of the moments that made you choke up? Because I remember like even, to the moment, like where I was, like what mile marker I was at, hearing the emotion in your voice.
Well, briefly, I asked Patsy Rembert to describe the night that he was nearly lynched, and he was strung up from a tree, and they were beating him, and he eventually somebody intervened, and at the last minute before they killed him and said, no, we're going to let him go. He never found out who that man was. But, to hear Aaron and also his wife, Patsy, talk about that incident was just remarkable. And I am somebody who loves big, huge, grand, redemptive stories. And this book is nothing if not that, because he's from this little town called Cuthbert, Georgia. And that's the place where he grew up. That's the place where they nearly lynched him. And he returned there, a year or two before he died, or kind of, much, much later in his life. And he was welcomed there as a hero. He was welcomed there as kind of the most famous person who's ever come out of that town. He was welcomed there, by these are people who've lived in that town their whole lives, and the descendants of the people who've lived in that town and lived in that town when he grew up. And here he was returning with a hero's welcome to the place where he was nearly killed. And it's just, the arc of his life is just remarkable. And his wife said, like, that when we were talking about that, she said that was the greatest moment of his life, to return to that town in that way. And that got everybody choked up.
I cannot even imagine the multitude of emotions there. I know we all contain multitudes in that sort of Whitman way, but I cannot imagine just the sort of whirlpool of emotion at that point. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's really hard to follow that, Mark. And so
but you will.
But I don't have the book that I wanted to talk about, because they very uncharacteristically lent it out, which I never do with books, because I like to mark my books and like underline and dog ear, whatever. But I've been recommending this book to everyone ever since I saw the author on your show, which I was producing, and that author is Tess Gunty. And the book is called The Rabbit Hutch, and it is the National Book Award winner for this year. So we are recommending to you a Pulitzer winner for biography, the National Book Award winner for The Rabbit Hutch. I was so impressed by Tess during this interview that I wasn't even that mad that she's also really beautiful. But like, why? Like, is that fair? I don't think so. Anyway, The Rabbit Hutch was super interesting to me because it was is it polyphonous? Is that how you would describe it?
Polyphonic novel, correct.
Polyphonic novel. It was polyphonous.
Polyphonous.
Show me that llama, because I said polyphonous. Look that up. That deserves a llama, which means that it has many voices. And this is one of my favorite ways to tell a novel. It's like that Elizabeth Stroudian kind of thing that she does in Olive Kitteridge, where it looks like there are a bunch of stories and each of the voices chimes in as a chorus. And part of the fun for the reader is putting together like what the commonality is. The Rabbit Hutch takes place in a, oh my God, I'm like losing my word. In a community, in a housing community. Thank you.
Right.
In a housing community in rural Indiana. And one of the things that I love about this so much is that it showcases an area of the country that we don't see enough in fiction, and that I am super fascinated with. And that is kind of like the Rust Belt, like the Midwestern Rust Belt. Nobody writes about this. It seems like, why would you even write about that? People drive through it as fast as possible. Like if you're going to go to Detroit or Indianapolis or one of those cities like Cincinnati or something, you just think like, oh, how quaint. I'm going to go there and like spend a night in a Marriott and then go do my thing and then get out. But I've had like the great privilege of actually, the guy I dated in college is a Border Patrol officer in Detroit. And the last time I did a reading there, he said, do you want to go for a ride? And I was like, do you know me? Of course I want to go for a ride. So we went to this fabulous dinner in Grosse Pointe, which is like this neighborhood that's so manicured that like, you know, the lawns are groomed with tweezers. We had this amazing French dinner. We got in his car and he drove me into downtown Detroit, like 4 blocks away. And there at night, we were driving through robber baron mansion territory, like these big, beautiful mansions that were completely deserted. They were overgrown. They had deer in them. They had people like doing massive drugs in them. They had become squatters' mansions. Grass was literally growing up through the windows, and it was an incredibly dangerous neighborhood. And then like literally 2 blocks away, some of the biggest wealth in America. And so much of our Rust Belt cities are like that they built on industry. And now they have become a sort of division between the ultra rich and the totally disenfranchised. And this is the kind of thing that Tess Gunty is looking at in The Rabbit Hutch, is like, who are the people who live in these cities? And I think that deserves a big narrative. Like, I was so glad that this book won the National Book Award. I've recommended it to everybody. So good.
Yeah, just, I mean, I think the comp that Tess gets a lot is Jennifer Egan, and I think it's a spot on. I mean, there's the polyphonic aspect. She does all these different voices, but also just the intellect. I mean, just one of the smartest books you're going to come across. And just, you know, talking to Tess on my show, I mean, just a bona fide intellectual as well as a great storyteller. So what a future. I think you're not supposed to talk about people's ages, but like, I think she's like not even 30. I mean, she is like got a big future in front of her. So that's like really exciting to see.
Yep. Blonde chicks with intellect, man.
Hey, you know about that.
Representing, and speaking of sing a little ditty or show people your llama for a second.
Yeah.
Right. Show them your llama and we'll be right back after you do
Yes.
something.
Oh, well, you sort of left me and the llama hanging there, but
But I wanted to do a quick. I should have done this before. Sorry, you guys, but like, look at my cute outfit. I don't have a llama, but I have like princess sleeves. So anyway, haha. I wanted to talk about the books I'm most looking forward to in 2023. And watch this space because we're going to be doing a Blaze newsletter where all of our authors and all of the people working on Blaze are going to talk about what we're most looking forward to reading in the week between Christmas and New Year's. But I'm going to get the jump. You guys, I'm going to hold up.
yes, sir.
By our own Zeitgeist on-air host, Jane Roper. This book is so freaking funny. You have to wear Depends when you read this, people. Like, Jane should actually be handing out packets of Depends when she markets this. It comes out April 4th, and it is about a woman who has a menstrual accident, and it gets caught on national news while she's in the act of discovering that her husband is having an affair, and she becomes kind of a hero for like bleeding women everywhere, and it becomes a hashtag on Twitter called Yes We Bleed. It was like so ridiculous. So it's a send up of cancel culture. It's a send up of the things that we feel shame about. And it is just so freaking hilarious. It's like Carl Hyacin, except as a woman. So that's one of my most look forward to books. And the other one, also by a Blazer, you will be so happy that I told you about this. You heard it here first. Daughters of Nantucket by Julie Gerstenblatt, who is one of our lit chick on-air hosts, but also like a mighty producer. She's behind the scenes of so many of our shows, and then we force her on camera every once in a while. This book is like the Real Housewives of Nantucket, y'all. It is the best kind of historical fiction because it's so accessible. It's also funny, and it has this incredible plot line about three women on the island during the Great Fire of 1840. I have to look at this. It's 1849. I'm so bad with dates. Not even on the back. Anyway, 1848. Oh my God, I was so close. I am so proud of myself. Anyway, so three women, one black, two white, of all different social strata whose lives converged during the Great Fire. And y'all, there's fireballs in here and hoop skirts and mad sexy time and whale oil and also an implement that I cannot talk about, but you will find out if you read this. So you should pre-order this now, and you should also pre-order Society of Shame. And you can find both of them on Bookshop in our Mighty Blaze author Bookshop stall. And P.S., my final commercial is for Thoughtful Bro himself. In 2024, he has a book coming out called Bunyan, which is a retelling of the Paul Bunyan myth that is so inspiring. Chris Vasquez, you asked earlier, like, what would be great for a younger T-bro? It basically is like this incredible sort of steampunk retelling of the Bunyan tale with Paul Bunyan doing all sorts of feats of daring do. But it's also a comment on American society, on American grotesquerie, on American optimism. It has this huge heart. It's so rollicking. It's so good. So you should put that on your list like right now for 24, because you're going to buy it for everybody in your life in 23, including every young T-bro you know.
Wow.
Boop.
Jenna, that was so sweet. Just warming my llama cockles, so to speak.
No boutique goes on.
That was so sweet. Thank you. And yes, I agree. Jane and Julie's book, I've read them both already, and they are terrific. So
they're so good. They're so good. Yep.
All right. Well, we have to wrap. This has been amazing. Thank you, the audience. The audience has been pretty steady. Thank you guys for sticking with us. These books, again, the creme de la creme. There's a lot of creme outside these books, but you know, this is the creme de la creme. And
this is not your creme. This is creme de la creme.
You cannot go wrong with any of these books. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Thoughtful Bro all year. It's been a tremendous year. I'm taking some time off to do some revisions on the book that Jenna was just talking about, but that should all be done in the next month or two. And then I will be back with many great interviews. I just can't wait to get back on the Thoughtful Bro horse. I love doing this show, and I love it when you guys come out and watch and comment. Thank you, everybody. It's been an amazing year. And of course, thank you to the fabulous Jenna Blum, my guest, third year in a row. Blaze is amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for being on the show.
You're amazing, bro. No, you No, you. I love it when Mark allows me on air instead of me just randomly bombing the show, like to like give him shit. It's so great. Thank you. You are like a joy of my life. And while you're away, can I be thoughtful hoe instead of thoughtful bro and take over your show? Show.
We will discuss that.
You didn't say no. So I'm gonna.
I'm not going to be cornered by you on air. We will discuss this offline.
Okay, scarleting is coming. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for watching The Blaze, for bringing your light to the blaze. I hope you go buy many, many, many books. Remember, books make best gifts. And we'll see you here next time on The Thoughtful Bro. Happy holidays. Happy reading.
Wait, that was like it was your show. You just like exited my show. I'm the one who takes us off air, Jenna.
Okay, bye. You're not going to be able to top that though. So
I'm not really. So I'll just kind of meekly end with a whimper here. Thanks, everybody. Have a great new year. Be safe. And we'll see you on the flip side on Thoughtful Bro.